There are two fundamental modes the human nervous system can operate in. And every moment of every day, in every conversation, every room you enter, every decision you face, every challenge that appears in your path, your nervous system is running in one of these two modes. The first mode is ancient. It is the mode of the organism that scans the environment for threats, that reads every social signal as a potential danger, that keeps the muscles slightly tensed and the breathing slightly shallow and the mind perpetually half distracted by a background hum of low-grade vigilance that never fully quiets. It is the mode of the prey animal. The second mode is equally ancient. It is the mode of the organism that moves through its environment with settled certainty, that reads social signals not as threats, but as information, that breathes deeply and fully, that occupies space without apology, that meets challenge with engagement rather than avoidance, that radiates a quality of calm, grounded readiness that other organisms register immediately and respond to with instinctive deference. It is the mode of the predator. And here is the truth that nobody in the mainstream conversation about male psychology is saying clearly enough. The mode your nervous system defaults to is not primarily determined by your mindset. It is not determined by your confidence level or your social skills or your childhood experiences or your morning affirmations. It is determined, to a degree that will genuinely shock you, by your hormonal environment, by your autonomic nervous system tone, by the biochemical state your body is carrying into every room, every interaction, every moment that requires you to be fully present and fully yourself. And semen retention, specifically the hormonal and neurological changes it produces over weeks and months of sustained practice, shifts the nervous system from prey mode toward predator mode in ways that are measurable, documentable, and felt in the body before they are understood in the mind. Stay with me, because this is the conversation that explains everything about why some men command rooms and others disappear in them, and what you can do about it starting today. Let us begin with the neuroscience, because the predator-prey framework is not a metaphor. It is a direct description of two distinct neurobiological states that have been studied extensively in both animal models and human subjects, and whose characteristics map with striking precision onto the experiences of retained versus depleted men. The autonomic nervous system, the master regulator of the body's involuntary functions, operates through two primary branches that are in constant dynamic balance with each other. The sympathetic branch governs the fight-or-flight response. When activated, it elevates heart rate, constricts blood vessels in the periphery, dilates the pupils, increases cortisol and adrenaline secretion, tenses the skeletal muscles, and shifts blood flow away from the digestive and reproductive organs toward the large muscle groups needed for combat or escape. The parasympathetic branch governs the rest, digest, and restore response. When dominant, it slows heart rate, dilates peripheral blood vessels, deepens respiration, relaxes skeletal muscles, and creates the physiological conditions for recovery, digestion, reproduction, and, critically, the highest levels of executive cognitive function and social engagement. Here is what most people do not understand about these two branches. In the context of social and competitive environments, the environments modern men navigate daily, sympathetic dominance is not the mode of the powerful man. It is the mode of the threatened man. The man whose nervous system is reading the environment as dangerous and whose body is preparing to defend itself. Parasympathetic dominance, what physiologists call high vagal tone, is the neurological signature of genuine safety, genuine power, and genuine social confidence. It is the state from which the most effective social engagement, the clearest decision-making, the most grounded interpersonal presence, and the most natural expressions of dominance and leadership emerge. The predator does not operate in sympathetic overdrive. The lion does not stalk its prey with cortisol flooding its bloodstream and muscles tensed for escape. It moves in a state of relaxed, total readiness, parasympathetically dominant, fully present, completely unhurried. That is the neurological signature of genuine apex status in any social hierarchy. Now here is the question that connects this directly to semen retention. And it is a question whose answer is more specific and more biochemically precise than most people in this conversation have ever laid out. If predator mode is parasympathetic dominance and prey mode is chronic sympathetic activation, And if the autonomic nervous system balance is governed by the hormonal environment, then the question becomes, what does the hormonal environment of chronic ejaculation do to autonomic balance? And what does the hormonal environment of sustained retention do instead? The answer to those two questions explains everything. Stay locked in. Testosterone is one of the most powerful modulators of autonomic nervous system tone in the male body. Its relationship with the sympathetic-parasympathetic balance is well documented and deeply consequential. High free testosterone is consistently associated with increased vagal tone, the parasympathetic indicator measured by heart rate variability that we have discussed in previous conversations. Men with higher testosterone exhibit lower resting heart rates, greater beat-to-beat heart rate variability, and faster cardiovascular recovery from stress, all signatures of parasympathetic dominance and autonomic resilience. Critically, high testosterone is also associated with reduced amygdala reactivity to social threat cues. The amygdala, the brain's primary threat detection and fear processing center, is directly modulated by testosterone. Studies using functional MRI have demonstrated that testosterone administration reduces amygdala activation in response to threatening faces, angry expressions, and social dominance challenges. The high testosterone man literally perceives social threat as less threatening at the neurological level, not because he is cognitively minimizing the threat, but because his brain is physiologically less reactive to it. This reduced amygdala reactivity is the neurobiological signature of predator mode. The organism that does not over-respond to social threat signals is the organism that is operating from a position of genuine security rather than chronic vigilance. It is the organism whose nervous system is not spending its resources on defensive monitoring and can therefore deploy them fully toward engagement, opportunity seeking, and the expression of genuine capability. Chronic ejaculation, through its suppression of free testosterone, elevation of prolactin, and disruption of the hormonal environment, produces the opposite neurological state. Lower testosterone means higher amygdala reactivity to social threat, more vigilance, more defensive monitoring, more resources devoted to threat detection, and less available for genuine engagement. The nervous system reading every social environment through a slightly heightened threat filter, producing the low-grade anxiety, the social caution, the slight background tension that depleted men carry without being able to name its source. This is prey mode, and it is being generated not by external danger but by internal biochemistry. There is a second hormonal mechanism driving this nervous system shift that is even less discussed than the testosterone connection. And it involves the relationship between cortisol, the hippocampus, and something researchers call threat generalization. This is the mechanism that explains why chronically depleted men experience anxiety in situations that objectively pose no real threat, and why retained men move through those same situations with a groundedness that looks to others like extraordinary confidence. Keep watching. The hippocampus, the brain's primary center for memory formation and contextual processing, plays a critical role in determining how the amygdala responds to potential threats. Its function is essentially that of a context provider. It supplies the amygdala with the contextual information needed to determine whether a threat signal is genuinely dangerous or merely superficially similar to something dangerous. When hippocampal function is optimal, the threat response is precise and proportionate. The amygdala activates in response to genuine threats and remains calm in response to neutral stimuli that merely superficially resemble threats. The man can walk into a challenging social situation, register its actual threat level accurately, and respond proportionately, with engagement where engagement is appropriate and caution only where caution is genuinely warranted. When hippocampal function is compromised, as it is under conditions of chronic cortisol elevation, the threat response becomes imprecise and disproportionate. The hippocampus cannot provide accurate contextual information, so the amygdala defaults to over-response. Neutral social situations are tagged as potentially threatening. Benign interpersonal signals are read through an anxiety filter. The man experiences generalized low-grade threat vigilance in environments that pose no actual danger, and his behavior, his physiology, and his entire social presentation reflect that vigilance in ways that others perceive before he is even aware of them. Neutral social situations are tagged as potentially threatening. Benign interpersonal signals are read through an anxiety filter. Retention normalizes cortisol. Normalized cortisol allows hippocampal volume and function to recover. Chronic cortisol elevation is literally neurotoxic to the hippocampus, and this damage is measurable and reversible. Recovered hippocampal function restores the precision of the threat response. The amygdala quiets. The generalized vigilance dissolves. The man begins to move through social environments with a quality of ease and presence that he may not have experienced since adolescence, or perhaps ever. That ease is not performed confidence. It is the neurological signature of a nervous system that has returned to its optimal operating state. The predator mode that was always available but had been biochemically suppressed by the depletion cycle. Now let us talk about what predator mode actually looks like in the lived experience of the man who has shifted into it, because the theoretical neuroscience only becomes meaningful when it is grounded in the specific, observable, felt changes that practitioners consistently describe. The first thing that changes is breath. Before anything else, before the social changes, before the cognitive changes, before the hormonal changes become consciously apparent, the breath changes. It deepens, it slows, it drops from the chest into the belly without any deliberate effort. This is the autonomic nervous system signaling its shift toward parasympathetic dominance through the most fundamental and most immediate channel available to it, the respiratory rhythm. The second thing that changes is posture. Not because the man decides to stand differently, but because the muscular tension patterns that chronic sympathetic activation imposes on the body. The slightly elevated shoulders, the subtly contracted core, the barely perceptible defensive contraction of the chest begin to release. The body expands into its natural spatial presence. The man takes up the space he actually occupies rather than the compressed space that chronic vigilance had reduced him to. The third change, and this is the one that others notice most dramatically, is eye contact. The depleted man in prey mode makes eye contact tentatively, breaks it first, and reads sustained eye contact from others as a dominance challenge requiring response. The retained man in predator mode makes eye contact steadily, holds it comfortably, and reads it as simple connection, neither threatening nor particularly significant. This difference in eye contact behavior is one of the most reliable social signals of nervous system state, and it is one of the first things that people around the practitioner begin to respond to differently. I want to stop here and say something that I think cuts through everything I have described with uncomfortable directness. Most men in the modern world are living in prey mode. Not occasionally, not in genuinely threatening situations, but as their chronic baseline, as their default state. And they have lived in it for so long that they have forgotten it is not their natural state. They have mistaken the anxiety for personality, the guardedness for introversion, the inability to be fully present for some fundamental limitation of their character. None of it is fixed, none of it is who they are. All of it is biochemistry, and all of it is changeable. The polyvagal theory, developed by neuroscientist Stephen Porges and now one of the most influential frameworks in trauma research and autonomic neuroscience, adds another layer to this picture that is deeply relevant to the semen retention conversation. Porges describes three hierarchical states of autonomic nervous system functioning. The most primitive is the dorsal vagal state, the freeze, collapse, and shutdown response associated with inescapable threat. The intermediate state is sympathetic activation, the fight-or-flight response of the mobilized but threatened organism. And the most evolved and most socially sophisticated state is the ventral vagal state, the social engagement system characterized by high vagal tone, facial expressiveness, prosodic voice modulation, genuine receptivity to social connection, and the capacity for the kind of present, engaged, authentic interaction that builds real relationships and real influence. The ventral vagal state is the neurological substrate of what we have been calling predator mode throughout this conversation. It is the state of genuine safety, not the absence of challenge, but the presence of sufficient internal resource to meet challenge without being destabilized by it. And it is the state that chronic ejaculation cycles, through their suppression of vagal tone and elevation of cortisol and prolactin, consistently undermine, pushing men down the autonomic hierarchy from ventral vagal social engagement into sympathetic threat vigilance, and sometimes, in the most severely depleted cases, into the dorsal vagal flatness and emotional numbness that looks from the outside like depression and feels from the inside like a peculiar gray absence of genuine aliveness. Retention, by restoring the hormonal conditions that support vagal tone, consistently moves men back up this hierarchy, from flatness to activation, from threat vigilance to social engagement, from prey mode to the genuine, grounded, socially intelligent predator mode that is the biological birthright of the healthy, hormonally vital man. There is one final dimension of this nervous system shift that I want to address, because it is the one that has the most profound implications for the man's relationship, not just with others, but with himself. Predator mode is not just a social state, it is a relationship with challenge itself. The prey animal's relationship with challenge is avoidance. Every obstacle is assessed for its threat potential. Every difficult situation triggers the question, can I escape this? The energy is spent on monitoring, on defensive positioning, on the management of potential threat rather than the pursuit of genuine opportunity. The predator's relationship with challenge is engagement. Every obstacle is assessed for its conquerable potential. Every difficult situation triggers the question, how do I move through this? The energy is spent on approach, on engagement, on the pursuit of genuine capability rather than the management of perceived threat. This difference in the fundamental orientation toward challenge, approach versus avoidance, engagement versus defense, determines the entire trajectory of a man's life over time. It determines which opportunities he pursues and which he lets pass, which risks he takes and which he avoids, how he responds to failure and whether it contracts him or instructs him, whether he builds something real across the years of his life or spends those years managing the anxiety of a nervous system that has never been given the biological conditions it needs to settle into its most powerful and most purposeful state. Retention does not guarantee courage. It does not eliminate difficulty or make challenges disappear, but it changes the nervous system's fundamental orientation toward challenge from one of chronic defensive vigilance to one of grounded, engaged readiness. And that shift, quiet, internal, biochemical in its origin and lived in its expression, changes everything about the shape of the life that follows. I want to speak to something that I think most men carry privately and rarely name out loud: the exhaustion of vigilance. The deep, accumulated tiredness of moving through the world in a nervous system that is always slightly braced, always slightly scanning, always carrying that background hum of low-grade threat awareness that never fully quiets and never fully resolves, because it is not responding to an actual external threat that can be addressed and resolved. It is responding to an internal biochemical state that perpetually signals danger where there is none. The deep, accumulated tiredness of moving through the world in a nervous system that is always slightly braced, always slightly scanning, always carrying that background hum of low-grade threat awareness that never fully quiets and never fully resolves, because it is not responding to an actual external threat that can be addressed and resolved. It is responding to an internal biochemical state that perpetually signals danger where there is none. It is a nervous system state generated by a biochemical environment that is within your power to change. The predator mode that feels like a distant memory, or perhaps like something you have glimpsed briefly in your best moments but never been able to sustain, is your biological default when the conditions are right, when the testosterone is not suppressed, when the cortisol is not chronically elevated, when the vagal tone has been allowed to recover, and the amygdala has been allowed to quiet, and the hippocampus has been allowed to restore its capacity for accurate contextual processing. Those conditions are available to you. They are built by the practice, day by day, week by week, month by month, of choosing conservation over depletion and watching the nervous system gradually, measurably, irreversibly shift toward the state it was always designed to inhabit. The prey mode ends the moment you decide it does. The predator mode begins the moment the biology catches up to the decision. Make the decision. Let the biology follow. The room is waiting for the version of you that fills it fully. If this gave you something today, if it named something you have been feeling without having the framework to understand it, please give this video a like right now. That single action helps this reach every man who is tired of living below his nervous system's potential. Share this with someone who you know is capable of so much more than his current state is allowing him to express. The framework in this video might be exactly what shifts his understanding of what is possible for him. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep building this biological and psychological literacy together. Every video here is crafted with the same depth and the same genuine intention to give you the truth that actually transforms rather than the content that merely entertains. And thank you, from the heart, for your honesty in watching this, for the part of you that recognized itself in this conversation and refused to look away. That recognition is the beginning of the shift. Stay grounded, stay engaged, stay in predator mode. See you in the next one.